The NFL is a league of what-ifs. One draft pick, one contract, one coaching hire. It only takes one wrong decision to send a franchise spiraling from contender to catastrophe. We see it every year. Instead of making the move that would have put them over the top, they zigged when they should have zagged. Maybe they overpaid for the wrong guy. Maybe they passed on a franchise-changing talent. Maybe they thought they were one piece away, only to find out that piece shattered everything that they had built. Well, let's take a look around at some of the major blunders that we've seen in the last couple of years and break down just exactly how it left the team in ruin. Chicago Bears, hiring Matt Eberflus and then not firing him last offseason. The Bears had a golden opportunity to clean house after 2023. They were heading into an offseason in which they were set to have the #1 overall pick, and the roster was seemingly starting to come together. But instead of cutting their losses with Eberflus, a defensive-minded head coach who's allergic to modern offense, struggles with player development, and just seemed to be overwhelmingly unpopular with both the players and fans, they instead doubled down by keeping him in the Windy City. Despite constantly showing signs that he could be the guy, if only he were in a better system to develop his skills, Justin Fields struggled mightily for 2 years under his watch. And when the team had the chance to reset, they elected to keep the coach who stifled his growth and helped drive the franchise into the ground. What made this decision all the more puzzling was that they did it knowing that they were going to take another rookie quarterback in Caleb Williams under center. They invested the first overall pick in him, but decided to saddle him with a terrible coach, forcing him into a clean house situation after his rookie season. The crazy part about this is that they did the exact same thing a couple of years prior to Fields during his rookie season when they kept Matt Nagy around. Just brutal decision making. Chicago's biggest mistake wasn't just hiring Eberflus, it was keeping him. Atlanta Falcons signing Kirk Cousins to a 4-year, $180 million contract, 2024. I mean, even at the time, this one had people scratching their heads wondering what Atlanta was thinking. The Falcons spent $180 million on a 36-year-old quarterback coming off a torn Achilles. Atlanta acted like they were one player away from Super Bowl contention. But in reality, they weren't even one quarterback away from a deep playoff run. They had an elite running game, solid weapons, and a young defense, but were still multiple pieces short of being a legitimate threat. So instead of building their roster organically, they panicked and handed Cousins a massive deal. Now on the bright side, their contingency plan and quarterback of the future, Michael Penix Jr., did look pretty sharp last year, but now he's going to enter his first full season as a starter with the most expensive backup quarterback that the game has ever seen. The shocking part really is that Atlanta fell into this trap. I mean, we've seen this play out before. A desperate team overpays for a good, not great quarterback toward the end of their career and then spends years trying to undo that mistake. They just might be able to speed through the undo phase, but we'll have to see, because Cousins has tied up a lot of their financial resources going forward. Cleveland Browns trading for Deshaun Watson and signing him to a 5-year, $230 million contract, 2022. This, honestly, might just go down as the worst contract in NFL history. And while there were some skeptics at the time, to be fair to Cleveland, no one could really see this level of destruction coming. I mean, the Browns were desperate for a franchise quarterback, and instead of taking a deep breath and assessing their options, they threw literally everything at Deshaun Watson, a quarterback who had missed the entire 2021 season and was facing more legal trouble than an entire season of Law & Order. They gave up 3 first-round picks and handed him a fully guaranteed $230 million contract, completely resetting the market in the process. Watson has struggled to stay healthy, most recently tearing an Achilles, but to be honest, injuries aside, he just never seemed particularly close to regaining form. The Browns bet everything on Watson returning to his old form, but instead, they got a guy who pissed off their entire fan base and has either been hurt, underperforming, or both ever since. And now they're handcuffed by one of the worst financial commitments in sports history. Jacksonville Jaguars hiring Urban Meyer as coach, 2021. Some coaching hires just don't work out. Others are so catastrophic that they almost permanently derail a franchise. And considering that they brought in Meyer during first overall pick Trevor Lawrence's rookie season, and what we've seen take place since, there is no argument that the decision to bring in the renowned college wasn't the latter. You see, Meyer didn't just fail. he melted down in dramatic fashion, seemingly making the team worse on a weekly basis. He lost the locker room immediately, picked bizarre fights with his own players, and showed zero understanding of how the NFL actually worked. And of course, there was the off-field embarrassment, skipping team flights, partying at bars, and it got so bad that he allegedly kicked his own kicker during practice. The one good decision Jacksonville made, pulling the plug before he could do more damage. But still, they completely wasted a year of Trevor Lawrence's development and set their quarterback and the franchise back in a major way. Tennessee Titans swapping out A.J. Brown for Treylon Burks in a trade with the Eagles, 2022. You might not know it if you watched how their offense functioned the past couple of years, but there was actually a time that Tennessee had a pretty promising group coming into form under Mike Vrabel. It was centered around the run game and Derrick Henry, but the Titans had a surprisingly effective passing game, largely thanks to their bona fide wide receiver one, A.J. Brown. Exactly the type of player that teams should be building around. So, naturally, they refused to pay him, in part because their GM seemed to have personal conflicts with the young wideout. And instead, they shipped him to Philadelphia, where he continued to ascend, eventually winning a Super Bowl. Make matters even worse, they tried to replace him with Treylon Burks, which has been a catastrophic failure in its own right. By getting rid of Brown, they torpedoed their passing attack and sent the franchise straight into a rebuild after years of promise. New York Jets drafting Zach Wilson, 2021. If you want a case study in how one draft pick can set a franchise back half a decade, well, look no further than the Jets selecting Zach Wilson second overall in 2021. Wilson was completely overwhelmed from the jump, proving time and time again that he lacked the pocket presence, accuracy, or leadership to be a starting QB in the NFL. But instead of cutting bait early, the Jets just kept giving him chances, and it completely wrecked the competitive window that uber-talented defense had opened. They built up an elite defense, stockpiled weapons, and yet spent years being sunk by some of the worst quarterback play the league has ever seen, which of course took them to where they are now. Reeling from a divorce with an aging Aaron Rodgers, near the top of the draft, bottom of the standings, and established one of the most dysfunctional orgs in the game today. Philadelphia Eagles drafting Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson, 2020 draft. Okay, this one might be a bit of an outlier because it didn't exactly ruin the Eagles, I mean, considering their recent success, but this decision was so baffling that it still has to be included. To Howie Roseman's credit, the Eagles have more than bounced back from this disaster. But make no mistake, this was a disaster. It was one of the most baffling draft decisions in recent memory. Justin Jefferson was a stud at LSU, a can't-miss prospect coming out of one of the most dominant college seasons ever. Jalen Reagor, meanwhile, was viewed as a raw speedster with questionable hands and route-running ability. Jefferson, of course, immediately became one of the best receivers in the NFL. Meanwhile, Reagor was a total bust, failing to establish himself in Philadelphia and getting dumped to the Vikings for scraps just a couple of years later. The Eagles were able to course correct, landing A.J. Brown in a trade and hitting a home run with Devontae Smith in the draft. But just imagine if they had picked Jefferson in 2020 and what this offense could have looked like. Las Vegas Raiders hiring Josh McDaniels as head coach, 2022. The Raiders had something to build on after making the playoffs in 2021, despite all the chaos of the John Gruden scandal. They had a tough, battle-tested roster, a quarterback in Derek Carr who could get them to the postseason, and a solid interim head coach in Rich Bisaccia, who had the locker room completely bought in. But instead of trying to build on that team-centric ethos, they brought in one of the biggest egomaniacs that the league has ever seen in Josh McDaniels. And, well, it went about as bad as one could expect. This was a disaster from the very start. McDaniels came in and immediately alienated key players. He ran an outdated offense, made mind-boggling in-game decisions, and by the time he was mercifully fired midway through his second season, the Raiders were in complete disarray. The locker room hated him. The fans hated him. Even ownership clearly had no faith in him, cutting ties well before his contract was even up. McDaniels set them back years. In fact, they're still in ruin because the team had to gut its roster, cycle through quarterbacks, and just start all over. This was a brutal decision that should have never been made. New York Giants re-signing Daniel Jones to contract extension, 2023. One solid season. That is all it took for the Giants to talk themselves into giving Daniel Jones a $160 million contract. They convinced themselves that Brian Daboll had fixed him, that the turnover-prone, inconsistent quarterback that they had seen for 4 years had suddenly transformed into a franchise guy just because he played well in a run-heavy offense and won a playoff game against a fraudulent Vikings defense. Well, predictably, Jones came crashing back down to earth in 2023. He was bad when healthy and couldn't even stay on the field. The Giants have now paid him a fortune despite pretty much having to start looking for his replacement almost immediately, as the performance was never even close to coming together. To add insult to injury, losing their star running back Saquon Barkley to their hated rivals, the Philadelphia Eagles, was a byproduct of this decision, and he went on to win a Super Bowl there in his first year with the team. Yeah, that one's gotta hurt. Luckily, they did have an out this year and have effectively hit the reset button. But man, what a disaster the decision re-signing Jones turned into. And it was all captured on Hard Knocks for the world to see. Indianapolis Colts trading first and third round picks to the Eagles for Carson Wentz. 2021. This was a bad one. Indy sent a conditional second that turned into a first and third round pick to the Eagles for Carson Wentz, a quarterback who had just gotten chased out of the city of brotherly love after an ugly season as he continued to struggle to regain form after a fate-altering ACL injury. With the Colts for the 2021 season, Wentz's numbers did improve, but he faded massively down the stretch and struggled in all the key moments that the team needed him most as they made a playoff push. When all was said and done, Indy missed the playoffs, and instead of getting a potential franchise guy, they got another one-year disaster that they are still paying the price for. Because this move didn't just set Indy back a year. No, it sent them into a full-blown QB spiral. From Wentz to Matt Ryan to Sam Ehlinger to Nick Foles to Gardner Minshew. Heck, they even had to resort to Joe Flacco. Even now, they have tried to get younger by investing in Anthony Richardson through the draft, and that too has been a disaster. The Colts have now spent years scrambling for an answer at quarterback, and the decision to invest in Carson Wentz so heavily, no doubt, is what kickstarted all of it. But hey, what one decision do you think most ruined your favorite NFL team? What do you think we got right here? What do you think we got wrong? Was there anything notable that we may have missed? Let us know in the comment section below. If you liked this video and learned a thing or two, then clicking the like button helps us out a ton, and you know, we really appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, then subscribing is a great idea, because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.